So,
Yes, sir.
I heard you were using generative AI tools
I am,
on your
yes.
next project. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I am capable of talking about, I have kind of had a full baptism in Mid-Journey and ChatGPT and Luma Labs and, you name it, I've tested it out. Like I was telling Yves that I spend probably 3 hours a day working on things in AI. Have gotten to the point where I shared with him, I don't even answer my own emails anymore, right? Like Merlin answers them for me. So, I think that it's really useful and it's going to be a tool that collectively helps all filmmakers and artists.
Can you can you give us some specific examples of something that that generative AI has empowered for you or supercharged, like a specific function or task?
So I could give you one that I just had, right? A couple of nights ago, I'm working on a new script and I wanted to test out uh, finding a way to fix holes in the story, right? So I created a prompt with my story to ChatGPT and asked it how it would finish the story, right? And out of the 9 or 10 things that it sent out, 2 of them were really useful, right? And part of it, I was having a conversation this morning with Nam Lee about uh, there's so many filmmakers and artists in any type of way that feel like AI is an enemy of ours in some type of way, right? And that it's going to take all our jobs and things like that. But what I've experienced, even with all the time that I spent on Midjourney, that it's not that I can't get the perfect image from it yet, right? It's just because I know the language doesn't make me a poet, right? You have to sit there and learn it, and you have to continuously chisel out what you need in order to get something that's going to be useful out of it. So it won't instantly just become a thing that is that's a world changer, except for the people that put in the time.
And what do you wish it would do that it's not doing yet?
I wish that, uh, honestly, the only wish I had is that I could learn faster to be able to get the prompts exactly right, at least by the 100th time, right? Because sometimes it really does take over 100 times of working on it on a single prompt to get a particular image that I want to get. But it's like I just learned uh, for people that work with horse racing and things like that, that it's never the horse's fault, right? So it's like it's never the AI's fault. It's like I don't know how to properly ask the prompt yet, but I'm working at it.
And so you're using mostly ChatGPT as a writing assistant. Are you using stable diffusion models like Stable Diffusion, Midjourney?
So I use Midjourney, I use DALL-E 2, like I said, use Merlin. I've started using Blackmagic has DaVinci has one for facial recognition stuff and facial refinement, and that's an AI tool that I've been also playing around with that I'd never used before.
And when we met a few weeks ago, um, you told me something really interesting that I heard since then from other creatives using generative AI, which is it sometimes feels too easy. It sometimes
Right.
feels like it's cheapening the creative process. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Until, right, if you're trying to make something simple like kids sitting in a field of flowers, that's gonna feel like cheating. You're gonna get 5,000 examples of that pretty simply. But recently, a lot of my work has been in world building and coming up with really ultra specific things. So it's not, you can't just say, you can't give it one sentence and it's going to make the thing for you. One of the things that I have to take on myself that all of these years have passed and I haven't worked on Photoshop at all. And it's like, oh, the only way that all of these tools are really going to work for me is I'm going to have to start working on Photoshop to make it work in the proper way.
You were trained in image making.
Yes.
How do you see um, the education, cinema education, changing with these tools?
I think that, okay, so perfect example. I think you and I spoke a little bit about it during that coffee meeting. Is that I don't know how many of you are all are familiar with Shot Deck, and I was like in the beta for Shot Deck. I used it all the time, and now I understand that in 2023, if I'm using other people's movie images to explain my movie, I'm being lazy, right? I now have a tool to jump on Midjourney and make the exact image that I'm going after versus taking an image that, out of I started doing filmmaking in 2013, 2014. I've probably seen at least 1,000 pitch decks. And out of those 1,000 pitch decks, I've probably seen about 500 pictures. Everybody's using the same pictures over and over and over and over and over and over. And now we have a tool that can make that very specific to your story. Very, like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Show us what you want to do, not what Stanley Kubrick did.
Another thing that we hear a lot about from creatives who are using generative AI, it's in the creative process. There's two broad areas. There's the decision making,
Right,
and there's the crafting.
right.
And we're hearing that a lot of creatives are, generative AI is taking the crafting out of the equation and focusing everything on the decision making, because you're making decisions about which kind of characters to have, which how are they going to look like, how the set's going to look like, things like that. But then the crafting of the image itself gets automated. And I guess the question is, how much of being able to craft an image is really the road to discovering new avenues and new decisions in the higher level creative process? In other words, like, if you're Picasso, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I like where this is going.
and you have an idea, you're making decisions about how you want your portrait to look like.
Right.
And as you're going about to paint it, so in the process of crafting that image,
Right.
maybe some creative avenues, start appearing, some accidents start appearing, right? And that's an opportunity in the creative process. How do you feel about automating the craft versus and putting everything on the decision making?
So the only way the craft gets abandoned is if we leave the post, right, as the filmmakers, as the artisans involved, right? If we're just like, you know what, that's too difficult, I don't want to learn this, I'm going to reach out to my graphics people or my prompt people, and they're going to take care of that, and I'm just in the process of saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. At that point, you've relinquished those happy accidents that you would get, right? Because I certainly, in those 100 or so prompts, I'll see things that I didn't intend that come out that I'll hold in a different folder for something else and things like that. So you are getting the discovery process just kind of in a different way. You didn't specifically paint that sign over there on the other side, but like you could see that it's useful, right? Same way that I don't have to think of the idea. You could come running and be like, see, Craig, what about this idea right there? I didn't think of that, but we're going to use it, right? So it's I have no more claim over what Midjourney puts out than I have over what you walk in there and bring to the table as a team member.
That makes sense. Another thing that's really fascinating is the notion that generative AI tools are putting, multi-million dollars worth of, VFX equipment and image making equipment in the hands of virtually anybody, right? So the tools to craft, high production studio quality images
Right.
and stories and are becoming very democratized.
Yes.
As someone who has spent many years of your life just acquiring the skills that it takes to do what you're doing, and went to the best film school in the world at USC, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about just anybody being their own Stanley Kubricks or their own Steven Spielbergs?
For me personally, I'm a believer in giving the information away. Like if anybody ever needs, like, so I was lucky enough to go to USC. I also went to NYU in Columbia, and I kept all of my syllabi. If any of y'all ever need it, I have it on a Google Drive. You could have the education for free, right? So, but that's because I believe the only barrier to entry is cost, right? So if you remove the cost of it, now it's just time. Like there are things like, yes, Midjourney and ChatGPT and DALL-E and all of that stuff and Luma Labs, it all seems simple, but you better believe it's work. It's work, and that's the thing. If you're willing to do the work, it's yours, right? It is instantly yours. The world is like, we were talking a little bit about the fact that all the people that know this game at the best level of it right now are 3 seasons ahead of us. That's it. That's it. Like, we can easily catch up. They want us to catch up. They want us to surpass. Like, that's what we're here for as filmmakers, as dreamers, as people with imaginations. So, yeah, I think it's wonderful that people can do it because I know it's not going to flood the market. It looks like work. Most people are gonna avoid work, and the ones that really want to do it are going to do the work.
Another thing that I think, another avenue that I think it opens up that could be interesting is the fact that, Fathead was the output of a long, creative journey and a lot of investment, a lot of time, and a lot of the time, if you pour that over to a studio, that's a very large investment,
100%.
And the ability to create content at a fraction of the cost and throw it out there, and in a data-driven environment,
Right.
really understand how it does with different audience segments before you commit to the $150, $200 million budget. Is that something that you think is coming, or we're gonna?
Yeah, like for the scale of things that I'm looking to do, risk mitigation is always going to be a component of it, right? And seeing how to avoid catastrophe as best we can, right? None of us are soothsayers, but we can get close to it now with AI. And so right now, on this side of it, I welcome it. If AI shoots down the idea that I really believe in, and they say, well, you know what, the algorithm says no, then I'll probably feel a little bit different. But I understand that. I understand why they have to do it, right? It's a tremendous investment. Fathead's feature is about $100 million, right? So like I understand what I am asking of a studio, but it is I'm willing to roll that particular die and see what happens with it.
The other thing that we're seeing a little bit pop up is, one phenomenon that I'm really fascinated with is fan fiction.
Yes.
And as years go by, fan fiction gets better and better.
Oh
right?
my gosh, yes.
And sometimes better than the actual franchise, right? And so I'm seeing a future not so far away where fans will be able to write their short, take one of the characters, right, in Fathead, for example, and make their own film with it, or create their own arc with it, and sort of like attribute it, right? And it's a notion of like, well, who owns the story, right? As a creator, you own the story, but then once the story is touching people in your audience, they kind of own it as well, right? And now they have the ability to craft their own narrative around it, to take your arc in a direction that you may or may not have thought about.
Yeah, like 100%. Like, and I think that's an important thing. And one of the things that Missy Polnishing, a collaborator of mine, that we understand is that the moment we hit send on that final cut, that's the end of it for us. It belongs to the world at that point. They can and should make more things from it. I don't fear that at all. I think that that's an essential part of your story living forever. If I'm the only person that could write my stories, I failed at it, right? So, I wouldn't be opposed to if I threw it in ChatGPT and ChatGPT wrote the best version of Fathead, that I'm going to turn it in and the byline will say ChatGPT. Like that's okay with me. That's part of the future that we all signed up for.
That's amazing. I'm wondering if anybody in the audience has any question.
So I'm coming a little late here. As 3 seasons to the generative AI realm, but have you ever explored playing around with like background plates in generative AI?
Yes, with the I did a little bit with the company Kubrick. I was talking with them, and like they're fantastic, and I really like the things that they're working on, and of course now being able to do ChatGPT somewhat in Unreal, and it'll only get better and better, and in Unity, it's going to be a fantastic kind of like frontier for us to build off of.
Luma.ai is another cool tool with a direct plug-in to Unreal. We almost had their CEO here today to speak, but he couldn't make it at the last minute. But that's another really cool tool, and that takes meshes or meshes. So, yeah.
But what do you think is the coolest AI technology? I got here really late, so I missed almost all of your talk and background, so makes it harder.
No, go ahead.
Great question.
Check. So the coolest for me, the one I use the most is obviously going to be Midjourney, right? Because for what I do for a living in my vocation, I need to use that more. But as far as like what's kind of like everyday use for me is Merlin and ChatGPT. But Merlin is because the more stuff that happens film-wise for me, the less time I have for like regular tasks. So Merlin is an assistant. It's a virtual assistant. It reads all your emails. It knows your thoughts.
Because I also was a little late to this, I didn't get to see your what your background was and what kind of generative AI
junkyard.
content do you create. Oh yeah, not that background, but
So my background is I am a filmmaker by way of USC, before that NYU in Columbia, and I was lucky enough to be a DGA member and get a very cool phone call from Eric Weaver and be like, hey, you want to come play with some awesome stuff? And I said, yeah, let's do it, and we made a really incredible movie. And yeah, so my background, but like if you want to know really drill down, I'm from the 7th Ward of New Orleans, so all of my stories come from there, right?
what kind of AI content are you making? Like generative AI? Like
Right now, I'm working with Eric Weaver on a animated film called Chickaboom. That it's going to be a lot of generative AI.
Am I on? Okay. So you're using Midjourney. Like, what's the main application that you're using it for? As a creative tool.
So for me, it's a lot of right now pitch decks, right? So much as when you're dealing with folks that want to be able to see exactly what you want to bring to it, it's a way. And right now, the secret to it is a lot of executives don't know it exists yet. So you walk into the room or you send it over, and their mind is instantly blown. They're like, how'd you do this, right? And it's a magic trick. Keep it to yourself for a while, right? So like it's a really useful tool for just kind of being one-to-one, because your only job as a filmmaker is to take your imagination and give it to people as close to as you imagined it as humanly possible, right? That's why it takes. I was talking earlier about that. It takes me sometimes over 100 prompts in to be able to get something to drill down, and that's right now part of the labor of it. If it gets better, I'll be one of those people who be like, oh, I remember when it was harder and you had to earn it more. But like, no, that's part of it. It's cool, and I hope it does get faster and more precise. But it doesn't know what we want either. You have to be able to give it. It's not the software's fault.
Great. Actually, I have a comment about that too. I mean, at the end of the day, working with AI or in virtual production, we're all storytellers, right? And what's going to separate us is the taste that you've taken the time to develop,
Right.
and your point of view, and that is valuable. And it's not something that will ever be taken away. But so these tools will just make that stronger and be able to facilitate us to tell the stories that we want to tell, the stories that need to be told. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate you guys coming out. The next session will be on how we kind of built this stage, in case anybody wants to understand what's involved in some of that. And then we'll be done for the day, but we have some amazing talks tomorrow. So if you come on back out, there's absolutely some fantastic folks. All right, thank you.